Three Questions by Leo Tolstoy. It once occurred to a certain king that if he always knew the right time to begin everything, if he knew who were the right people to listen to and whom to avoid, and above all, if he always knew what was the most important thing to do, he would never fail in anything he might undertake. Okay, now a thought comes to a king that if he knows the right time to begin everything, like a king is involved in many decisions on a day-to-day basis. He has to take care of his subjects, he has to govern the country, rule the country, and he has to make plans for the future. So in this circumstance, the king has to take a lot of decisions, so he's worried. So these three questions primarily come to him: which is the right time to begin everything, if he knew who were the right people to listen to and whom to avoid, and above all, if he always knew what was the most important thing to do. So he wants to know when to begin all his work, who are the right people that he should listen to, and what was the most important thing to do. So let's go ahead and continue the lesson. And this thought having occurred to him, he had it proclaimed throughout his kingdom that he would give a great reward to anyone who would teach him what was the right time for every action, and who were the most necessary people, and how he might know what was the most important thing to do. So now king is worried. He knows that if he gets the answer to these three questions, he will be able to be best, one of the best kings ever, or if not the best king, who would benevolent king who can rule over his subjects very wisely and very efficiently. So he realizes this, and therefore he institutes a reward. Like he says that I'll give a reward to anyone who gets me the answers to these three questions. So learned men came to the king, but they all answered his questions differently. In reply to the first question, some said, to know the right time for every action, one must draw up in advance a table of days, months, and years, and must live strictly according to it. So some of the people, wise men or learned men, told him that he has to make a timetable and follow it thoroughly, like table of days, months, and years, and in advance jot down everything and assign timings to everything, and then follow up on that timing. So in essence, a timetable. Only thus said they could everything be done at its proper time. So this was the only way to see that you could do all the things at the proper time. Okay, let's see. Some others said something else. Let's see what they said. Others declared that it was impossible to decide beforehand the right time for every action, but that not letting oneself be absorbed in idle pastimes, one should always attend to all that was going on and then do what was most needful. So some people told him, don't involve yourself in idle pastimes and do the thing that is needed the most. So instead of like wasting time on unnecessary things, you have to keep that same time for necessary things. Others again said that however attentive the king might be to what was going on, it was impossible for one man to decide correctly. So some other people told him that however good you are, or however capable you are, you will not be able to do it alone. So one man to decide correctly the right time for every action, but that he should have a council of wise men. So they suggested to the king that he constitute a council of wise men who would help him to fix the proper time for everything. But then again, said others said there were some things which could not wait to be laid before a council. So some people were of the opinion that there are some things that cannot wait to be laid before a council of wise men. Some urgent things are there that way in life. Like there might be something suddenly comes up and king has to take a decision on the spot. So some people said that You can't only depend on a council of wise men. But in order to decide that, one must know beforehand what was going to happen. Now, this is a kind of a fiction story. No one knows what is going to happen beforehand. But let's see what the author wants to convey to us. It is only magicians who know that, and therefore, in order to know the right time for every action, one must consult magicians. So, okay, so some people in the kingdom said that you can't know everything, and however capable you are, you won't be able to handle sudden decisions. Decision making has to be prompt on the spot. So for this, you'll have to consult magicians. So they were of some of the subjects were of the opinion of the council of the opinion of consulting magicians. Let's see what happens in the future of the lesson. Equally various were the answers to the second question. So the second question also had many different answers. Some said the king most needed were his counselors, others the priests, others the doctors, while some said the warriors were the most necessary. So people were telling him all different kinds of things, See, king, you need your counselors. Some people said, no, you need your priests, you listen to your priests. Others said, no, you listen to your doctors. Some said warriors. Now, king is getting all sorts of answers. Now, most likely he might be confused with so many array of answers and different perspectives. To the third question as to what was the most important occupation, some replied that the most important thing in the world was science. Others said it was skill in warfare, and others again that it was religious worship. All the answers being different, the king agreed with none of them and gave the reward to none. So the king said, okay, you people are giving me all assortment of answers. I don't agree with any of you, none of you. And so I'm not going to give the reward to anyone. I will, okay, let's see what happens. But still wishing to find the right answers to his questions, he decided to consult a hermit, widely renowned for his wisdom. So, okay, now the king doesn't have answers to his three questions. So, as a last refuge, or maybe I don't think he will be able to find anyone in his kingdom other than the hermit. Looks like the hermit is his last resort. So, in his kingdom, he goes to consult a hermit, and the hermit was widely renowned for his wisdom. So, the king goes to meet the hermit. The hermit lived in a wood which he never quitted, and he received none but common folk. So the king put on simple clothes, and before reaching the hermit's cell, dismounted from his horse, and leaving his bodyguard behind, went on alone. Okay, so he dismounted his horse, put on simple clothes, because the hermit never met anyone who was in royal dressing and all that. He needed to be humble. Okay, so now when the king approached, the hermit was digging the ground in front of his hut. Seeing the king, he greeted him and went on digging. The hermit was frail and weak, and each time he stuck his spade into the ground and turned a little earth, he breathed heavily. So the hermit was frail and weak, and he was digging in front of his hut. And when the king came, he greeted the king, and then he went on digging. He was frail and weak, he was breathing heavily. So now let's see what happens. The king went up to him and said, I have come to you, wise hermit, to ask you to answer three questions. How can I learn to do the right thing at the right time? Who are the people I most need? And to whom should I therefore pay more attention than to the rest? And what affairs are the most important and need my first attention? The hermit listened to the king, but answered nothing. He just spat on his hand and recommenced digging. So the hermit didn't answer the question. He just listened to the king, and then he continued, put on some spit on his hand and continued digging. You are tired, said the king. Let me take the spade and work a while for you. Thanks, said the hermit. So this is the first time the hermit speaks. And giving the spade to the king, he sat down on the ground. When he had dug two beds, the king stopped and repeated his questions. The hermit again gave no answer, but rose, stretched out his hand for the spade, and said, "Now rest a while, and let me work a bit." But the king did not give him the spade and continued to dig. 1 hour passed, and another. The sun began to sink behind the trees, and the king at last stuck the spade into the ground and said, "I came to you, wise man, for an answer to my questions. If you can give me none, tell me so, and I will return home." So the king is tired now. He's almost lost patience. He eagerly wants the answer to his three questions, and his last hope was this hermit, and the hermit also is not telling him anything, so he doesn't know what to do. So let's see. Suddenly, some new development happens. Let's see what happens now. "Here comes someone running," said the hermit. "Let us see who it is." The king turned round and saw a bearded man come running out of the wood. The man held his hands pressed against his stomach, and blood was flowing from under them. When he reached the king, he fell fainting on the ground, moaning feebly. The king and the hermit unfastened the man's clothing. There was a large wound in his stomach. Okay, so there was someone who came running, and he had a wound in his stomach, and bleeding. It was bleeding profusely. So let's see what the hermit and the king do. The king washed it as best he could and bandaged it with his handkerchief and with a towel the hermit had. But the blood would not stop flowing, and the king again and again removed the bandage soaked with warm blood and washed and rebandaged the wound. When at last the blood ceased flowing, the man revived and asked for something to drink. The king brought fresh water and gave it to him. So the king and the hermit together attended to the man, bandaged him. It was a very severe wound because it was bleeding again and again. So they were good Samaritans to the wounded man. Meanwhile, the sun had set and it had become cool. So the king, with the hermit's help, carried the wounded man into the hut and laid him on the bed. Lying on the bed, the man closed his eyes and was quiet. But the king was so tired with his walk and with the work he had done that he crouched down on the threshold. Threshold is the place where the door meets the front walk of a house, where the where you just enter the house. No, that's called the threshold. And also fell asleep so soundly that he slept all through the short summer night. When he awoke in the morning, it was long before he could remember where he was, or who was the strange bearded man lying on the bed and gazing intently at him with shining eyes. So the next morning, when the king woke up, he was so tired that he had a very sound sleep, and he he didn't know he almost forgot why he was there the previous day and all. Then he realized to himself, okay, I had come to meet the hermit to ask him the three questions, and then there was a man with a wound running towards them. We attended to him, and now he's awake looking at me. So let's see what happens. "Forgive me," said the bearded man in a weak voice, when he saw that the king was awake and was looking at him. "I do not know you and have nothing to forgive you for," said the king. So he's asking for forgiveness, the bearded man. And the king said, "I don't know you. Why should you have anything done against me that I should have to forgive you? You do not know me," said no, the bearded man saying now. "You do not know me, but I know you. I am that enemy of yours who swore to revenge himself on you, because you executed his brother and seized his property. I knew you had gone alone to see the hermit, and I resolved to kill you on your way back. But the day passed and you did not return. So I came out from my ambush to find you, and I came upon your bodyguard, and they recognized me." Now, bodyguard can be a plural also. Here, it can be a collective noun. So, bodyguard can mean more than one person also. "And wounded me. I escaped from them, but should have bled to death and had you not dressed my wound. I wished to kill you, and you have saved my life. Now, if I live, and if you wish it, I will serve you as your most faithful slave, and will bid my sons to do the same. Forgive me." So, in essence, the king had punished this man, and the man had sworn revenge to the king against the king. And the bodyguard happened to come across this man and wounded him. And if the king and the hermit had not saved the man, he would have died. The king was very glad to have made peace with his enemy so easily, and to have gained him for a friend. And he not only forgave him, but said he would send his servants and his own physician to attend him, and promised to restore his property. So the king was very happy to make peace with his enemy, and reconciliation is always good and healthy and joyful. So let's see. The king approached him and said, "For the last time, I pray you to answer my questions, wise man." "You have already been answered," said the hermit, still crouching on his thin legs and looking up at the king who stood before him. Okay, I missed one para. Just a minute. Having taken leave of the wounded man, the king went out into the porch and looked around for the hermit. Before going away, he wished once more to beg an answer to the questions he had put. The hermit was outside on his knees, sowing seeds in the beds that had been dug the day before. So the king still wanted answers to his three questions. He went outside and he saw the hermit planting seeds in the beds that had been dug day before. The king, last time he wanted to see if the hermit would give him any answers. So he said, "For the last time I pray you to answer my questions, wise man." "You have already been answered," said the hermit, still crouching on his thin legs and looking up at the king who stood before him. "How answered? What do you mean?" asked the king. So the king said, You never answered me. What do you mean that you have answered my questions? I never heard any answer from you." So let's see. Then the hermit replies, "Do you not see," replied the hermit, "if you had not pitied my weakness yesterday and had not dug those beds for me, but had gone your way, that man would have attacked you, and you would have repented of not having stayed with me. So the most important time was when you were digging the beds, and I was the most important man, and to do me good was your most important business. Afterwards, when the man ran to us, afterwards, when that man ran to us, the most important time was when you were attending to him. For if you had not bound up his wounds, he would have died without having made peace with you. So he was the most important man, and what you did for him was your most important business. Remember then, there is only one time that is important now. It is the most important time because it's the only time when we have any power. The most necessary man is he with whom you are, for no man knows whether he will ever have dealings with anyone else. And the most important affair is to do him good, because for that purpose alone was man sent into this life. So here we have the hermit finally answering the king's questions, and by all standards and means, it is a very profound answer. Let's go through it again. Last paragraph. "Do you not see," replied the hermit, "if you had not pitied my weakness yesterday and had not dug those beds for me, but you had gone your way." Now, if the king would have not helped the hermit, he would have gone back and the man would have killed him. So, in essence, it would be end of the story for the king. So, the most important time was when you were digging the beds, and I was the most important man. To do me good was your most important business. Afterwards, when that man ran to us, the most important time was when you were attending to him. So when the bearded man was running towards the king, the most important time for the king was when he was attending to the bearded man with the deep wound. So he was the most important man, and what you did for him was your most important business. Remember then, now this is the profound advice of the hermit. There is only one time that is important, that is now. So now you should concentrate on what things you do at the very moment. You should not worry about the past nor the future. Be in the present. It is the most important time because it's the only time when we have any power. So we have only any power to act we have now. We cannot affect the future, nor can we change the past. So what we have in our under our power or in our hands to affect, we should affect. The most necessary man is he whom you are, is he with whom you are. That means whoever is in your company at the time now, that man is the most important for you. For no man knows whether he will have any dealings with anyone else, and the most important affair is to do him good, because for that purpose alone was man sent into this life. So the hermit says, to do good is our duty and our purpose.